Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
Hare Krishna, Indira-Sakhi Mataji, may we start?
Hare Krishna.
Shall we start, Mataji?
Certainly.
Oh, all right, Mataji. Hare Krishna, dear Matajis. I humbly welcome all Matajis gathered here on this auspicious evening, which coincides with the disappearance day of Sri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj and Sri Rasikananda Prabhu. So first and foremost, allow me to convey my heartiest gratitude to all of you for registering yourself for this important lecture today. We are certainly fortunate to have Her Grace Indira-Sakhi Mataji this evening. Thank you, Mataji, for giving us this wonderful opportunity and for kindly accepting our request to be with us today. Prior to hearing from Mataji, kindly allow me to give a brief introduction about Mataji. With your permission, Mataji.
Please, you're most welcome.
Her Grace Indira-Sakhi Mataji is a disciple of His Holiness Bhakti Vikasa Swami Maharaj. She is a M.Tech graduate from IIT Delhi and came in contact with ISKCON during her college days. Mataji and her husband both had a very successful career before deciding to give up their jobs and taking up residence in Sridham Mayapur. Mataji is a great inspiration to many women devotees in ISKCON, I being one of them. She is an exemplary Vaishnavi and has demonstrated the practicality and relevancy of the instructions of Srila Prabhupada in this modern time by beautifully balancing her responsibilities as a housewife and a mother. Mataji has also authored a book which is meant to be a happiness guide for modern women entitled How I Achieve Real Success. I would like to read an excerpt from the preface of the book where Mataji wrote, a related challenge for me, quote, a related challenge for me personally was to understand and accept my role as a woman according to the Vedic tradition. In the Vedic culture, spirituality is a way of life. It's not something that one engages once a week on Sunday, unquote. Srila Prabhupada, in reference to the Vedic tradition, has clearly enunciated the role of women in the society through his books, lectures, letters, and conversations. But there is always a lingering question in regards to the relevancy and practicality of those instructions in this day and age, which brings us to the most awaited topic today, which is Is the Vedic role of women relevant and practical in the 21st century? Let us all give a warm welcome to Mataji. Whenever you're ready, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. So happy to be with all of you today. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share a few things. It's an interesting topic. So shall we begin?
Mataji, certainly.
Okay. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunivadi Paschatya Deshitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for inviting me here to be in your wonderful association. So today's topic is the Vedic role of women relevant and practical in the 21st century? I talk about this often because it's also a topic which is frequently misunderstood, or we have some misgivings related to some of the things regarding Vedic role for women. So let's discuss some of these things today. So we will begin with trying to understand what is the Vedic role for women, and we will see whether that is how that contrasts with the role that is there in modern world, if it is similar, dissimilar, and then how is it relevant in today's world. So the first thing I would like to point out is that when we think about the Vedic role, we should not be confused that that is what we see in India today or in Asia, because the Vedic culture in its pristine form naturally over the ages has degraded as Kali Yuga has progressed in all aspects. So therefore, the society and the roles meant for men and women, the way it ought to be ideally, are not seen. Therefore, we see how they exist in some form and shape, and we form our opinion about it, often a negative opinion. So that's important for us to understand, that when we think about Vedic culture, do not confuse it with Indian culture. Of course, Indian culture has a semblance to Vedic culture. It has strong roots, and there is a similarity, but there are also very important differences now. So we should have an open mind about what is Vedic culture and what are Vedic roles for men and women. And where can we get this information? It is in our scriptures. So we turn to scriptures, we turn to our acharyas to get instructions about this. So it's important to understand what that is before we form our opinion about it. So we begin with discussing what is the Vedic role for women. In 7th canto, 11th chapter, verses 25 to 28, Narad Muni talks about the role of women. And it's interesting because this comes after the discussion of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and then he talks about women, because women are a class apart. They are a separate entity in Vedic culture, and they have their own unique role. So Narad Muni emphasizes that the role of a woman is to serve her husband very nicely, to serve his relatives, to be favorably disposed towards her husband, and to follow the vows of her husband. Further, he explains about how she must keep her household very well. He explains about the good qualities she must develop. So that is one place where the role is very clearly defined in our Shastras. We are so fortunate that we have the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, because he describes it also in many places wherever there are pastimes related to women devotees. So he explains how they are playing their role very expertly, and that is meant to give us inspiration and guidance. So an important part of the role is about how the women would remain under the shelter of their family. So where the narration of Devahuti is mentioned in third canto, so third canto, 33rd chapter, 19th verse, Srila Prabhupada mentions, in childhood, a woman must be under the protection of the parents. In youth, she must be under the protection of the husband. And in old age, she must remain under the protection of the grown-up children. So this is another aspect of the role of women, that there we call it kshetra. The area of her activity was her home. It was the household, and she would be looked after like that. So that was another important aspect of her role. So how are the women contributing to society? Their contribution is like a supportive role. So Srila Prabhupada mentions it very poetically, just like he does all the things. He says they are the power of inspiration for men. So in first canto, Bhishma Dev is giving instructions to Yudhishthir Maharaj while he's on his deathbed. So this is explained in detail in Mahabharata, and Srila Prabhupada kindly explains it in his purport. And he mentions there, 1927, as far as women class are concerned, they are accepted as a power of inspiration for men. So you see, their role is a very important one, because the men have a role to play in so many aspects. You know, they have to guide their own family, they have to contribute actively to the society, each of them have their occupations, and it's a very taxing role in itself. So the women are giving the support, the encouragement for them to go on. And that's a very beautiful way of working as a team. So the husband and wife work in such a way that the husband may be actively doing things, but he's able to do that because he has complete support of his wife. So this is a very important role that they play, that they act as a source of inspiration for the men. So this means that, so that's why the women are classified as separately. It is not that they don't have anything to do, but what they do is closely tied with what their husband is doing. So if the husband is a Brahmana, then the wife is called a Brahmani, because she also assists in whatever he's doing. If he is following the rules and regulations of cleanliness, so does she, because she also has to do similar things. He's doing the yajna and she's providing the paraphernalia for it. And if he's teaching, he has a gurukul, then she's the guru mata and she's also looking after the students there. So whatever the husband is doing, she has a very important supportive role. And of course, she has the role of a mother. So that's part of, that she has to be favorably disposed to the husband's relatives, which includes the children, an important, very essential aspect of a woman's life. So we see that in our scriptures, and explained further by Srila Prabhupada, the role of a woman is primarily, most importantly, that of a wife and mother. So that's one aspect of her role. And the other thing is that how should her conduct be? So that is also mentioned, and that's related to her role, because that determines how she behaves. And it is explained that a woman should be shy, dignified. And when we talk about shyness here, Srila Prabhupada mentions the word shyness, and that this quality should be developed in women. So again, not to misunderstand, it doesn't mean that a person of low self-esteem, people generally who are the people who are shy, who are afraid to speak up. They don't want to make a fool of themselves. So this is not in that context or to be understood like that. It's just like a devotee is meant to be humble, lower than a blade of grass. So that does not mean he is not qualified, but that is the internal mood he has because he wants to serve. So similarly, a woman, it's not that she doesn't know anything, so therefore she should just, be relegated to the background. No, it's to maintain a certain etiquette in society, that there was a way she was expected to conduct herself. So it maintains the respectability, Srila Prabhupada mentions, of women. When there isn't shyness, means that they are not very open, they are not mixing with everyone all the time. So they will remain within their family. If a person by nature is very bubbly and boisterous, she will be like that, but more because she keeps the company of women. So with her mom, with her sisters or other ladies, she'll be like that. And when there's an assembly where there are men, then she will be more sedate. And that is a desirable quality, because it makes the women more dignified, and automatically people respect such ladies. So from a young age, they are taught to behave like this in a mixed assembly. And then so many reasons this maintains the entire atmosphere in the society, because it people will not look at women all the time with lusty thoughts or like that. So that was one important reason, because scriptures teach us that this is a very powerful force, the attraction between men and women. So the society was structured in such a way that that is not aggravated. It's there, it's already there in material world, but we do not want to make that the primary goal of life, that just work on that and men and women enjoy. So these are very in brief, these are some aspects of the Vedic role of women. Now, what do we see? Do we see this in the modern world? To some extent, mostly no. So let's talk about women being primarily mothers and wives. Yes, of course, women are getting married. They do have families. But that is not considered to be a big deal. If the women are encouraged that you must have your own identity, just to say that I'm wife of so and so, or I'm mother of so and so, that's like okay, but who are you? Like, that's not you, that's in relation to other people. Of course, if you say you're CEO of so and so company, that's also in relation to other people. But anyway, that is what is expected, that you should have an individual identity which is separate from your family. And if you are solely in a setup where you are concerned with your family and most of your day is spent in looking after them, then it is considered okay, well, nothing very creditable, or nothing much to, that's not much of a contribution to the society, is it? I mean, you're just staying at home. What's the big deal? So this role of being a mother and wife is looked down upon in some ways, in the sense that it's not given much importance. It's expected that, okay, that's a part of your life. It's not a big part of your life. You will get married, but well, plan for the future, because anyway, children will grow up. Even if you are a mother, how long will that last? Children will grow up. So you must have your own life. That's one thing. As far as remaining under the protection of the family, no. In childhood, a woman is supposed to be under the protection of parents. I left my house when I was 17 years old, and I was studying in a hostel very far from where my parents were living. And that's considered normal, that if you have to have a professional training, you go wherever you are selected, and no big deal. In youth, she's supposed to be under the protection of the husband. Sometimes, yes. I mean, if they're fortunate to be married and living uh, in the same town, but sometimes women get a better job opportunity in another city, so no big deal. She relocates, and they consider that this is good for their future, for the future of their children, whatever the reasons be, but it's not considered essential that she remains under the protection of her husband. And similarly, in old age, many parents choose to live alone. It is a different thing that some children are not dutiful, but also oftentimes we hear that parents, they do not want to, even if the mother is unfortunately by herself, she would rather stay alone than adjust to the lives that her children have. So that's not happening either. So women are not remaining under the protection of their family. As far as shyness is concerned, the conduct is concerned, again, a sea change we see, because more and more of the girls, the women are expected to face the world. So naturally, if you are expected to leave your house by 17, you're trained to be very bold, independent, and since you have to face the world, you must learn to speak your mind to anyone and everyone. So there is no question of shyness. And also, when one is independent, then you also have independence of who you want to be with, how you want to dress, how you want to conduct yourself. And more often than not, being very influenced by media, women choose to be more not very conservative in their dress and behavior, because these are subtle things. We don't even realize it, because the media is bombarding us with images that are considered fashionable. That is, it may be a short skirt, or it may be a short top, sleeveless, and or tight pants. And we just accept it as fashion, and we also adopt it, and we think we look very nice. Of course we do, but nice in what way? So the women accept these kind of things, and that's become normal. So we do see in the modern world there is a lot of difference between the role that a woman has compared to the Vedic role of women. We have moved away from the Vedic role. And when we talk about Vedic role, it is not just relevant for Indians or Asians. The principles of Vedic culture actually were practiced all over the world. That in other countries also, there were all the women were happily, taking care of their families, and living in that way where they are protected by the male members of their family. So this was not just in India, but in the last century, things have changed. So fine, they have changed. They must have changed for a reason. And we are told that the reasons were that women needed to be more independent, and some of them were bored at home, others were mistreated. So the solution to all problems was to step out of this protective shell of the family and take charge of their life. So what is the need to discuss this? Because, that's where we are now. The need to discuss it is that, unfortunately, women around the world are not happy. So we have adopted this culture, which has progressed very, very gradually. It has taken a whole century for us to get here. But we're not happy. So for my book, because I did find this topic very intriguing, so I started to write about it after examining so many of Srila Prabhupada's instructions, observing the world around us, and listening from other senior devotees who were talking about this. So I started to write about it, and I decided to do my research in the Western countries because they have perfected the modern culture. Just like there was Vedic culture and there's modern culture, and who is perfect in that? It's the Western countries. They've completely moved away from traditional culture. So it's useful to study them because it will tell us what's the end result. Or of course, they're still evolving. It's not that it's there, but where has it led to? And then I came across so much research which shows that women are not particularly happy in this role. So let's take these things one by one that we talked about. So about being mothers, wives and mothers, a lot of ladies very late in their life realize that they missed this opportunity to have this aspect of being a wife and mother. Either they get married very late, or they reach a point where they really don't get married, or they are married but they have children very late, or they are unable to have children, or they are married and have children but they did not spend time with them, and they are in such a situation through their own mind or because of what society has kind of influenced them into doing, that they are left with lingering sorrow or guilt. Because all of us who have been mothers understand what a joy it is, how fulfilling it is to be a mother. But when you don't have enough time to really indulge in that or to look after your children, it leaves a hole in your heart, really. And these are not my words. It's big CEOs, women who are working in the White House, who leave their high-profile jobs, and they have said things like, people expect that both men and women will leave their children to work, to follow their career, but without understanding that they feel differently. So you may make all arrangements that that you have a nanny at home and they're looked after. It's not that these are people whose children were neglected. Like there is the Indra Nui, who was in PepsiCo. She was, I think, the CEO, CFO, one of those. And she had her mom looking after her children. So she had a very big support system. But the guilt lingers because what a mother can do, it's very different for that to be covered up by no matter how much of a big support team you have. And the women said that it's just they did not feel happy doing that, leaving their children behind. So it's not, and they clarified that it's not that the fathers love their children any less, but it's just a different mental makeup. Like the fathers are satisfied that they're working hard and providing for the children, but the women are satisfied as mothers if they are there for the children. So it's a different thing, and because of that, women are not happy. They have taken these life choices, but at the end of it, they are not satisfied. So similarly, being under the protection of the male members, now we have so much freedom to chart out our life, to plan our life. But it ends up that women are more emotional and they are vulnerable. They are looking for affection. And when they are on their own, sometimes, many times, unfortunately, they are misused in that way, that somebody may engage with them in a relationship. At a point, the women want to formalize the relationship and the men don't want to do that. So they are left high and dry. And just like Srila Prabhupada would say, the big difference is that the women get pregnant but the men cannot. And people may say, well, what's the big deal, you know? So she can bring up the child, or she can give away the child. But the point is that she bears that. The man can walk away, but it's for her to take that decision, what to do now that she's in that situation, if she has the child, to raise the child. And it's a very, like Prabhupada said, it's an awkward situation. The women are put in a helpless situation. So when they are not under the protection, then it's not a happy state of affairs. On the other hand, when there are women who are taken care of, then they feel very secure and satisfied. So we can also discuss why this is important, because of two things, which is that they are delicate in their bodily structure, so they need protection, like physical protection. But more important than that, because you may get that if you're living in a country which has very good law and order, but more important than that is the mental security, and the fact that you don't want some unscrupulous men to take advantage of you. So that happens when society is structured in such a way that they are looking after the women. So this whole idea of being independent, having series of relationships, and thinking that we have now finally the choices that men used to have all the time, that, you know, they can do whatever they like and nobody is critical about them. Look, now women can do that too, and nobody raises an eyebrow. They don't say that, oh, you're living together, that's very bad. They'll only tell the woman and not the man. It's acceptable, okay, fine, they're doing that. But who is suffering really? Because at the end of it, there are many unhappy relationships. So we see that with all this progress, this culture where women have been given a lot of freedom, it's not that there is no advantage to it, but there are many disadvantages also that we sort of close our eyes to, or nobody talks about it very much, or nobody wants to take responsibility for it. The entire blame is put on, oh, some men are like that, the men are terrible, or, you know, we just have to improve the child care system and everything will be all right, or we have to make sure that the divorce laws are more favorable towards women, then they will not be put into a helpless situation. So like that, there are these, you know, piecemeal solutions, but we are not addressing the root of the problem, which is the degradation of the culture. So this is the reason we are talking about this. Then we see also about conduct, that in the movement which liberated women and enabled them to, you know, be within the pages of a magazine in not very properly dressed, and that was considered, yes, this is like a big step forward, because now nobody is going to look down upon such women, and they are considered actually very big stars, and it's very fashionable to do so. So that shyness is gone completely. But again, has it been a positive change? Well, in many cases, no, because as we saw in the Me Too movement, that women have been exploited. They have been treated very badly. So by giving women freedom, has it improved their lot, or has it put them in a more vulnerable position? And these are things we don't want to talk about, because the women don't want to lose their independence. Even people who talk about this, they say, you know, we don't want the women to go back to being at home and just not stepping out of their house. We want to improve the situation. We want to create awareness. Yes, that's good. Of course, we do want to raise the moral values in society in general, so that the women are not abused. But that will not happen by just saying that oh, you should be better controlled, and you should have the sense to respect all women, because yes, the men have to come up a certain level, but the women also have to transform themselves. So so that's an important consideration. Please excuse me for 1 minute. I didn't realize my phone is running. Okay, so therefore we are re-examining the modern culture, and we are going back to what our scriptures tell us, because not looking at the degraded form of Vedic culture, if we look at how it's meant to be, it is designed in such a way that it caters to the inherent nature of women, and it's designed in such a way, their role is structured in such a way that it is conducive for their mental state. It's conducive for society in general, but we're not talking about that, because that's what in my book also I concentrate about, how it affects women. I'm only talking about women, because we get defensive if people start saying that men, that the children are neglected. I'm so sorry. So the way it was designed, the role, it's not just something that someone randomly came up with, that let the men be in control, let the women be at home, we don't want them to have any importance. It's not like that. It's because they feel secure, they feel happy if they're looked after nicely at home. It works with their mental and physical makeup. It works for them. It works for them, it makes them happy and satisfied, and it helps the entire family, which again makes them happy and satisfied to see that the family members are satisfied. So these things are, the Vedic culture is scientifically designed. The Vedic role for women is meant to work in such a way that that it works with their mental and physical nature. So therefore, we feel that yes, the Vedic role for women is relevant for modern women. Is it practical? Yes, it is also practical, because we see that even today there are women all over the world. Not to just say that this is for devotees of Krishna. We'll come to that, why it is really relevant for devotees of Krishna. But all over the world, there are women who are following the traditional role, and they are happy to do so. So this is not something which is, completely outdated. And what are you talking about? How can it work? Because, nobody will be able to figure out how it's done. No, there are still women who are following these principles. And so we find it is practical. We have to have some intelligence to figure out how to apply the principle in the current situation. We also have to understand what these principles really are, because sometimes we don't understand, for example, if there is shyness, being submissive, it does not mean that the women never express their opinion. It means they do so respectfully, and the people, they are given an opportunity to speak. Just like we see Draupadi expressed her opinion when her sons were slaughtered, and then Ashwathama was brought, she said how she felt. We see Mother Kunti offering wonderful prayers. So these are some misunderstandings we have, that traditional submissive role means that just, locked up and told to just shut up and never say anything, do anything useful. So that's not the case. We need to understand that, and then we have to work towards making it practical. So those are some thoughts on this very big topic. I wrote a book about it. Thank you, Mataji, for quoting from it. And we discussed this in great detail in the book. Many, many aspects such as marriage and motherhood, career, education, conduct, dress, attitude. So we could discuss some of these things depending on where the question answers lead us today. Should we open it up for question answers, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, we can open up for question and answer session now. So dear Matajis, if you have any question, you can raise your hand as has been briefed to you in the WhatsApp group. So you can follow the way that we have briefed you. Or for those who are watching on Facebook, you can put your question in the Facebook comment. So if you have any question, you're more welcome to raise your hand now and ask your questions, Matajis. Any questions from the floor?
Okay, so in the meantime, I would like to read from, what we talked about, especially motherhood. So this is one of the ladies. She mentioned that she wrote an article, My Secret Guilt, over 35, single and childless. So I just want to read an excerpt from that. This is Melanie Notkin. She says, the grief hit me in my mid-30s without warning. By all appearances, my life was fantastic, or pretty close. I had a great job in New York, good friends, some good dates. But then there were times, lonely days and nights, when I would cry. I would sob. I would lie in bed awake for hours, tears running onto my pillow. I was in mourning, but I didn't know it. Having experienced the same feeling for a few years, I now know the grief was over being childless, or more poignantly, over the loss of the baby I never held in my arms. By that point in my life, I had expected to be married or a woman or a mother to at least 2 kids. I was far from it, still very single, no kids. Passing by a new mother and her infant strolling down Broadway would rattle my womb. So she talks so much about how she didn't realize it and she went ahead with life and suddenly it hit her. And there are other women who talk about how they feel cheated because this was never emphasized. And sometimes you realize it when it's too late. Sometimes women cannot have babies because they put it down to, that later, it's not the right time. But then it's too late.
Thank you, Mataji. That was a very nice excerpt that you have read. So we have question from Sri Bali Ratna Mataji. Tesha Mataji, may you please unmute Mataji so that she can ask her question?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, as you said, I'm a housewife with 2 daughters, and I'm not, this constant, this is like conflict of interest, I would say, is there. I'm not working, and this, as you said, the society expects that, it's as if I've wasted all my education. What am I doing sitting at home? And also the expectation is that, the minute you get married, you are a good homemaker. When you don't have any practice for it.
Yes.
The first time you enter into the kitchen and being left all alone, you're expected to cook a fantastic meal. So, raising 2 daughters, I'm always in a conflict. Like, how exactly is that change going to come? Because I would
Yeah.
say, yes, I'm from a conservative family, but it's like I want my daughters to be conservative and at the same time bold enough to face the society. It's always a conflict. I don't know where the one stops and the other begins.
Yeah. Yeah. So I faced this when I was growing up, that the women in my family were very conservative, but they were always telling us to be very bold and independent. So I feel they were also a little conflicted. They expected that we would very expertly strike the right balance, where we are very bold and independent to the world, and when we come home, we are very submissive and nice to family members. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, because the way you are, that's the person you become. It's very hard to be able to strike that balance, to be able to hold on to your culture and at the same time be that strong, competitive person in the outside world. So what to do? We have to make a choice, because especially as generations go by, one becomes more and more towards that person, because to be honest, in this competitive world, that sucks your time and energy. If you have a full-time career, then that's where you will be spending a significant amount of your time. So that balance kind of tends to tilt towards that person, and not the person who's holding on to her cultural values. It's much easier to be that person, because typically it gives you the freedom to be a little selfish. So we have to make a choice, and we have to understand why we are making that choice, and we have to pass that culture on to our children. Most important, extremely important, because now I would say it's time to turn back the clock. I was talking to my mom last night about this, and she was saying that what can you do? It's already, things are the way they are, and can you change the world? And I told her, yes, why not? One family at a time. I'm changing it for my children. My daughters know that this is their primary role. They are educated, but they're not expected to have a job. It's just one of the things that they may do if they need to, if the family requires it, but it's not going to be a big part of their life. I hope it will not be a full time. They should be resourceful enough to do something part time if at all required. But the main role that they will play is according to what is given in Shastras, what Srila Prabhupada wanted for the women in our society to be. And like I mentioned, that why this is more relevant for devotees, for those who are spiritually minded, because that's a very important aspect of our life. It's not just that we are balancing home and office. We also have a third aspect to it, which is our sadhana. So when you have three things, something has to give. When time is limited, we have limited time, limited energy, so something has to give. The office will not stop. They are not going to give you a break. Sometimes it's the children who are sacrificed. Sometimes it's our sadhana. So for women who are interested in making spiritual progress, this role is all the more relevant, because it gives you the peace of mind to pursue that spiritual life. So you mentioned that there is a conflict. I agree with you. There is a huge conflict between what we read and what the society expects us to be, or expects our children to be. To date, I have to face questions of, you're so well educated, you wasted your life, you're sitting at home, why? So I have to answer this question, and I'm bringing up my girls to be a certain way. They will be answering this question, but it's the choice that I have made. I have explained it to my children. They accept it. And of course, they are individuals in their own right. I have tried to explain to them why. It's not just that this is what mom, dad want you to be. So therefore it is, so they understand, they have accepted it, and they can also preach about it because they understand why they are taking these choices. So we can resolve the conflict by choosing one way or the other. Choose wisely. Hare Krishna.
Next, Brahma Mataji has a question.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, if you, I mean, like we are, I just came into this Vedic culture and I'm trying my level best to follow this culture. But if your family members, your husband and your kids are not into this, how do you harmonize the situation at home?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, very relevant question, because maybe you are inspired to do it and family members do not. Well, if you see what the Vedic culture is, and if you understand how it works for you and it is beneficial for the whole family, gradually everybody will see it. So again, like when people did question me for my life choices, but moving forward after 20 years, they see it like how our family is and how I am as a person. I'm very happy, satisfied. So these things become self-relevant. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, technology issues. So, so the family members will gradually see this. Maybe initially they will not understand why you are doing certain things or making certain choices. They may not be supportive, but if they see the benefit it is giving to you and consequently to your family, then I hope things will change for the better. So again, this is not something that may happen in a hurry, but if you stick to it and if you go about it sensibly, not making very drastic changes that people cannot relate to you anymore. So if you explain to them why this is important for you, then I hope your family will also become very supportive. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mataji. Next, we had Diana Mataji. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. My question
Krishna.
is, Srila Prabhupada mentioned about having a first-class father and a first-class brother and a first-class husband. But in most situations in Kali Yoga, there is dysfunctional family. What is your comment on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question. It's a very important question, actually, because when we talk about protection for women, there must be qualified men to take that role of protection. So yes, unfortunately, many times women don't have that person who can protect them. But what we want to do is we want to bring about this change over generations. So if a lady is in the unfortunate situation where she is left and she is, for example, a single mother, but at least if she understands the advantage of having a qualified person to look after her, or she feels that gap in her life. So if she has children, she can explain it to them, that to her girls, instead of saying that, see how terrible men are, just be independent, don't depend on men. You can say that, well, not all men are like that. And if you do have a nice person to look after you, it is a big advantage to your life, to your family life, and so on. So then as a mother, you look for that qualified person. You pray to Krishna that your daughter gets that person in her life. Similarly, you train your sons that they should look after the women in their family. So this is the change you can bring. How can you deal with it personally? You do the best you can. You seek protection within the congregation, if there are other grihasthas who can guide you, help you, because like I said, protection is not just physical protection, it's emotionally we need support. So you seek support wherever you can. If the men are not there who can provide that support, then of course we turn to Krishna. But my point is that we should not just make that the norm, that, oh, it can never be like this. So we still talk about the ideal situation, and we want to bring about that change through our behavior, through what we tell the next generation, and gradually things will change. We hope that they will change for the better. But for those devotees who are in that situation, well, they just have to make the best of their situation and not let bitterness stay in their heart because of their unfortunate situation and think that it can never work. That's the unfortunate thing. We see that some aspects of the culture don't work, and this happened within our movement also, that some women were not taken care of, and then they thought, well, what is the use? This culture doesn't work. And so they do not emphasize that anymore. They emphasize on the spiritual aspect, which is very important, of course. But these two things are correlated. They are intertwined. If you have a good material situation, it's conducive for your spiritual life, and our entire material situation has to be spiritualized. So therefore we talk about these things because they will be conducive for our spiritual life. So we try to bring that change. Does that answer your question, Mataji? Could Mataji please be unmuted so that we can see if she has a follow-up question or a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mataji. You've answered that. I think that also links up to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verse 40, where if there is what they call when the women of the family become polluted, and from degradation of womanhood. I mean, we see that many in developing countries, that situation where women are of lesser equality than men. And I think we can be examples to help to be beacons of lights for them. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much.
Mataji, there is a question in the chat from Stella Mataji. Hare Krishna Mataji, my question is that as a woman, is it true we get so much pleasure and satisfaction by serving our family, kids, husband, etc.? But nowadays, most of the husband or his family members are abusive. So in this case, the men are the cause of women making such decision of being independent and stepping out of the home because they are not protecting the women. So in my opinion, the men are the root cause of us making these decisions. This happens even in devotees' family. So I guess the men should also be educated about role of men in Vedic culture. And please advise, how are we women supposed to react when we are in such abusive family and husband? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for your question, Stella Mataji. Very important question. So that the role that the men have to play, yes. Just what did Mataji begin with? Just let me recollect. Yeah, so what to do if the men are, she said that mostly men are abusive and therefore women are forced to walk out of the situation. So, well, there's quite a range when we talk about abusive. So when you say abusive, it can also mean like a person is irritable and the husband and wife are fighting a lot because of that. And it can be to an extent where they are really honestly being tortured. So that's the very unfortunate situation, but that's not most of the cases. So we have to understand that firstly, that this is the reason given for a lot of women. It is said that, oh, it's really good that women are independent now because they don't have to tolerate abuse. But if we really look at statistics, it's not that 1 in 2 families, the women are being tortured and abused. But the divorce rates are that 1 in 2 families are being divorced. So there are many reasons why families are breaking up. This is a reason, but it's not a common reason. So we really need to understand that, because that is how it's portrayed, that how, you know, this is a reason and therefore we must support women being independent. But what to do if one is in that situation? And you mentioned that sometimes even devotees are in that situation. So let's see how this is handled in Vedic culture, that we appeal to seniors and we appeal to them to guide these men. And you made a very important point that the men should also know their role. Yes, that is what we want. So for example, there was a particular situation where women were being treated very badly, although that was not the main reason or the only reason why feminism started. But let's assume that, yes, that was one of the reasons or a major reason. So one way of handling it is that, yes, women just leave. It's a very bad situation, so you just leave. Another way of handling it is you try to rectify it. It may not work in extreme cases, but in some cases, certainly it would work. And in cases where it is not actually abuse, it's just misunderstanding or incompatibility, as they say, then you come to a middle ground and you don't have to break apart families. So this is the proposition of Vedic scriptures, that you do not divorce, you try to resolve things. And if things are really bad, Srila Prabhupada mentions again in 7th canto that one separates. You don't have to be in a situation where you're tortured. You do separate, you live separately, but there's no space for divorce. You just stay separately, in the sense that you don't remarry and put yourself through that risk again and so on. You just live a respectable life if you have to separate. So my proposition is that with an understanding of Vedic culture, the root of the problem, if the root of the problem is that the men are very degraded, then we work towards uplifting the men. And we do understand that women are quite powerful because they have brought about immense change in the past century. But what is the change they brought about? To bring acceptability to the fact that they want to be independent. Supposing we take that power that we have and we start to bring spirituality at the center of our lives and the lives of the people in our family, perhaps that will make a change which will rectify the men who are being unreasonable. So again, I mentioned it may not work in very extreme cases. There may be no options, but most of the cases are not that extreme. It is possible through our own good behavior or through mediation from seniors, be it family members or senior devotees, that the situation can be rectified. So work towards resolving the situation. That should be our first priority. And that is what our mindset should be, that we want to uplift the moral character of everybody, the men and women, and that will resolve these problems. So we have to go to the root of the problem. And that is, well, honestly, that is through Krishna consciousness, that is through re-spiritualization of society. So if we just work towards that, these things will get resolved. And we also need to be little realistic that this is not most of the cases. And we have to distinguish between abuse that can be rectified, resolved, and worked upon from abuse, which is torture. So let's not lump it all together, that abusive situation. It's like even people who are arguing, it's like, you're being abusive towards me. Well, maybe you are also being abusive back towards the husband. So we have to see these situations and really handle them case by case. My advice is someone else has to mediate. But the best way to handle it is amongst themselves, husband and wife. If they can develop good communication, if one person can be the calmer of the two, it helps, and they should work through their differences. I hope that answers your question, Stella Mataji. There's no easy solution. It's a huge, huge thing, because we are talking about changing the mindset of both men and women. But it's possible. We change so much in our life when we accept Krishna consciousness. We do make a whole sea change. So the more people accept this process, it'll change things for the better.
Stella Mataji replied by saying, "Thank you so much, Mataji. Your explanation is superb, made me very clear, and Hare Krishna." Mataji,
Hare
there are
Krishna.
some questions in the chats as well. You would
Yes.
like to take it, right?
Yes.
All right. This is a question from Diana Mataji. Earlier she sent, "Hare Krishna Mataji, question for Her Grace Mataji speaking. What are her thoughts on Bhagavad Gita 1.40 purport? According to Chanakya Pandit, women are generally not intelligent and therefore not trustworthy. Thank you."
Well, that's a class by itself, Mataji, Diana Mataji. So we have to understand what this means. When we say less intelligent or not intelligent, it doesn't mean that they are complete fools. Firstly, Srila Prabhupada always mentions generally. So that's not true for all women compared to all men. It's not like there are men, and when all men finish, then women start. There's more of an overlap, that there are some women who are more intelligent than some men. But in general, if you take the most intelligent man and the most intelligent woman, the men are likely to be more, that man is likely to be more intelligent. So what do we understand by intelligence? Is it that they can make more money or they're more successful at their career? No, when Vedic scriptures talk about intelligence, it's a mark of intelligence when we understand our true position as a spirit soul, when we can develop knowledge and renunciation. So renunciation, again, in general, is easier for men. That's just how their mental makeup is. Women, Stri means expansion. She likes to have children. She wants to have a nice house. I mean, my girls are 12 and 17, and they put so much effort in their room. So it's just something natural for women to do. So they're more, we tend to be more attached to things. And that's not a problem. That's just how we are, and we have to work with it. But it puts a roadblock in our spiritual life. Therefore, and we are more, another aspect is that women are more emotional, men are more rational. So they accept Vedic philosophy more readily. Now, this doesn't mean that there is a big problem because they are less intelligent. The reason this point is brought up is so that we can be aware that this may be a limitation and we work at it. In the sense that we understand that we are more attached, so we work towards being detached. And of course, Srila Prabhupada also emphasizes that Lord Krishna himself has said that even women, there is no barrier to them perfecting their life if they understand these things and they move towards Lord Krishna. So there's nothing to feel defensive about when these statements are made. Is it true women are less intelligent? Yes, it's true. It doesn't make a difference to devotees. It's just like, oh, so-and-so person is shorter and someone else is taller. It's just a physical thing, makes no difference. You just have to deal with it. You have to say, oh, I can't do this service of, reaching out for something higher, so I will take a step ladder and then do it. So these things are pointed out that this may become a limitation. Be aware of it and go beyond it. That's it. So if somebody is putting you down based on this, that is wrong. If somebody is giving you instruction based on this, that is proper, and we should be intelligent enough to accept that instruction. So we should not feel bad about it. And trustworthy is also tied to that because, you know, women are more emotional. Sometimes men say lies to them and, you know, misuse their affection. So for that reason, less trustworthy because they tend to, you know, work with their heart. Again, not a bad thing. Like we see in Draupadi's case, Srila Prabhupada mentions that she's soft-hearted, and that's a quality of a devotee. But again, these are warnings given to us that we don't get carried away and land up in an awkward situation. So therefore, these things are told so that the men are inspired that women are like that. Please protect them, be there for them. Family members, protect your women. And it is there for the women to be aware that these are things they have to be careful about. So that's a short explanation of a big topic of women being less intelligent and less trustworthy.
Hari Om, Mataji, beautifully answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mataji, there's another question from
Yes.
Mala Devi Mataji. Hare Krishna Mataji, please provide comments on single woman who has no interest to get married. Thank you.
So I would recommend that you please read my book because I just read the excerpt of a single woman who realized too late that she did want to get married. I'm also in touch with some of these women, not these women, but other women who are of a certain age. They postpone getting married, but at one point they realize they do want to do that. So if you don't want to get married, please examine your reasons for not doing so. The scriptures recommend that women should be under protection. There are many advantages to that. It is difficult because we have to quash our ego and be under somebody's supervision, but it has advantages. It really helps a woman's mostly a woman's mind and mental makeup is such that she wants to be secure under somebody's protection. She wants to have children. Being a mother is very, very satisfying. So please examine your reasons for being single because in most cases it is not recommended. And we don't want you to be in a situation where you realize it too late. Please take advice from the grahasthas or the householders who may tell you from their experience that often we hear about the negatives that, you know, oh, there are differences, people fight, or the children are rude, or they don't bother about parents, but there are so many positives. So perhaps talk to somebody who's happily married, hear about their experience, but mostly I would say I would recommend that you do get married because Srila Prabhupada wanted this for all the women. He has a good understanding of why this should be so. The scriptures explain to us why this is necessary, and women around the world, you know, realize this. I'm just flipping because there's a very interesting article that someone wrote about getting married. Just give me 1 minute. Where she said that you should settle, you should get married. Don't be so picky about who you get married to. Yeah. So this is she was a feminist. Her name is Lori Gottlieb. And she says, she writes in an article, it says, marry him. The case for settling for Mr. Good Enough. Like, don't wait till you get that perfect person. Just somebody suitable, marry. I'm quoting, my advice is this, settle. That's right. Don't worry about passion or intense connection. Don't mix a guy based on his annoying habit of yelling bravo in movie theaters. So she says, because if you want to have the infrastructure in place to have a family, settling is the way to go. Based on my observations, in fact, settling will probably make you happier in the long run, since many of those who marry with great expectations become more disillusioned with every passing year. So she's saying, marry as soon as possible, and marry the first person who is sort of suitable, because if you keep waiting for that perfect person, he may not come. So these are ladies who have experienced sorrow and disappointment in their life by following a certain path, and they're sharing their own life experiences. So I would suggest that please think about your decision and the consequences that it may have on your life, because after a certain point these decisions sometimes become irreversible about marrying or having children. It may be too late after a point. So from the point of view of what is given in our scriptures and the recommendation of Srila Prabhupada, I would say that women should get married. Stella Mataji's question.
Thank you, Mataji. Mala Devi Mataji said, thank you for your
Yes,
explanation.
yes, Mala Devi Mataji. I just saw Stella Mataji's question flash.
All right. There is also another question, Mataji.
Yes.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for your wonderful explanation regarding the role of women according to our Vedic culture. Mataji, what is your opinion on female Diksha Guru? Thank you, Mataji. From Vrinda Mataji.
Hare Krishna. You know, Srila Prabhupada explained to us that you should never say my opinion. So you should always give the point of view of scriptures. So there's no sense in me giving my opinion, or particularly on this topic, because the GBCs are still debating it. I would refrain from commenting on it. I do see that there are 2 points of view, so I can briefly mention those. One view is that we are equal spiritually, so there should be no difference between men and women. The other point of view is that, yes, we are equal spiritually, but still we have these material bodies. And Srila Prabhupada taught us to function in a certain way in society, keeping those material bodies in mind, and where the principle of shyness or the dignity of women is concerned, they do not take public roles. We have instructions of Srila Prabhupada on both sides, where in letters he mentioned, I want my sons and daughters to take the role of guru. On the other hand, we have a purport in Bhagavatam where he mentions that Suniti, being a mother and a woman, she could not be Dhruv Maharaj's Diksha Guru. So it's really a complicated topic. It is being debated. I do have an opinion on it, but I would not like to talk about it because it's not my place, because senior devotees are still discussing this. So what I've done is I've given you both points of view. There's way more than just this. There is so much research on both sides, but broadly, these are the issues. So it's complicated. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. You're still okay for taking questions? There is a question in the chat. Okay. Hare Krishna Mataji from Stella Mataji again. May I know what is your advice on how to choose a husband as I'm in my marriage age? As we see nowadays, it is a trend of Prabhus talking to many other Matajis and not following proper brahmachari lifestyle and serious in their spiritual life too. So may I know how to choose the right Krishna conscious husband? Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Well, so we do understand that the traditional method is arranged marriage. So it's best if some senior in the congregation can guide you and, find that suitable person for you. If that's not possible, because sometimes people don't want to take that responsibility, then there are devotee matrimonials. There are some devotees who take up that service. So I would encourage that you get in touch with someone who is willing to do that, because that's the best way of going about it. If we go about it ourselves, there's the risk of getting emotionally attached and then things not materializing. If there is no other option and you do have to take it in your own hands, then at least try to do it in the most respectable way as possible, always maintain suitable distance, even if you have to approach someone you think that person is suitable. Firstly, get a background check. So please talk to people who know the eligible devotees in your congregation or elsewhere. And then if there is somebody suitable, get someone to discuss this. And even if you have to talk to each other personally, then have some other devotees, senior devotee present there, so that it doesn't become very intimate, because these are very delicate matters. Sometimes, like I said, they don't materialize, but one person or the other sets their heart on it, and it can be disappointing. So it has to be handled with the proper etiquette. It's unfortunate if there are Prabhus who are talking to many women, but maybe they're misguided, and at the end of it, there may be some amongst them who are following the culture properly. So it's a difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing that we have put women in our society. I'm not talking only about ISKCON, but the larger society, where you just leave them to their for them to fend for themselves, look for a husband. How do you do it? You have to like make yourself attractive, presentable, engage with someone. It's so sad. That's the current system. So we hope you can find some compromise. Maybe a purely arranged match would not be possible, but please approach senior devotee, grihastha couples, or some senior devotees who would be able to guide you. Pray to Krishna. There are devotees who pray, and there's nothing wrong with that. If we are praying to have a qualified husband who will help us progress in our spiritual life, it's not a bad thing to do. Hare Krishna.
We have Sri Vali Mataji who raised her hand, but prior to that, allow me to read Priyasaki Mataji's question in the chat. Hare Krishna Mataji, why the role of women are lowered in the family?
Well, I wouldn't say it's lowered. It's just, it's like I said, it's a submissive, a more subtle role. So it is our thinking that makes it seem like it's lower. Srila Prabhupada mentioned this in one of the interviews, where he said, superior, inferior, you are thinking like that. It's different. So I would not say it's lower. Why would you say it's lower? Because I have seen families in my own extended family where the women are not, the center of the action. The men are taking the decision, but that does not mean they are disrespected. Their opinions are also given, they're allowed to have their opinion. Perhaps the final decision is made by the men, and that also not in all cases. Like if it's related to the house or children, maybe the mother would be taking the final decision. But the point is, I have not seen that the women are disrespected or treated badly, or that the children are disrespectful towards them. So no, as a mother, your children should be respectful, and the other members should value the contribution you are making. And I have seen this, that in stable families, this is what happens. So I don't think the role is lowered. It may be that society has made it like that, but that's not how it's meant to be. And how do we improve it? Like we discussed, both men and women have to elevate their consciousness to understand what their roles are, follow those roles properly, and respect each other for that. So I don't think it's lowered. In general, I mean, that's not the way it ought to be. That's not the idea. At the same time, just like in an office, it's somebody is working, somebody is a leader. So for practical purposes, you may have one person who's leading and the others who are following. It doesn't mean that they are lower. It's just that's their role in that organization. I mean, not lower in a bad way. It's hierarchically maybe lower, but it's not a bad thing. Hare Krishna, Priyasakhi Mataji.
She said thank you to you, Mataji. Priyasakhi Mataji said thank you. Okay, Srivalli Mataji, you may ask your question.
Hare Krishna Mataji. It's related to less intelligent points that you made earlier, actually. Is it not contradictory, Mataji, that all the places wherein you read Bhagavad Gita, men and women, they have put a class apart, even for
Yes.
women, like that. And the most glorified prayer in all of Srimad Bhagavatam is the Kunti prayers. And the most glorified devotees of the Lord are the gopis of Vrindavan. And also when the Lord is leaving for Dwaraka, they say that women are one of most devotees because they are the ones with the most faith in him. So is it not contradictory, Mataji?
Yes, so it is not contradictory because Srila Prabhupada mentions that actually this is not applicable for devotees. Of course, he's talking about elevated devotees. So when you come to that pure platform, then there is no difference. Men and women, there's no difference. So this is really at a point when one is at that stage where one is aspiring to be a devotee, or in the material world, those who are not devotees, at that level. So therefore, it's not contradictory, because for those who are pure devotees, there is no difference. So that's why it is said that Lord Krishna says that they can also perfect their lives. Of course, if they're coming to Goloka, there's no difference between whether they had a man's body or a woman's body, right? So, but the thing is that we understand that the word used is generally. So these things are not very common. You do cite examples like Kunti Devi, and you're saying the gopis, but there are that many men also. It is not that in men's body we don't have exalted devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, the Pandavas. So you have equally exalted devotees in men's body. Of course, the gopis of Vrindavan, par excellence. But in that sense, it's not a contradiction, because most of these statements, firstly, it is in general. So we're not talking about exceptions. And secondly, it is really for the stage before being perfect devotees. So it's just general. In general, in woman's body, the intelligence is little less. Again, it's not like not intelligent at all. It's just that less intelligent.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I have a personal question to you as well. Is it proper for women devotees to lead kirtans in temples, Mataji? In a mixed congregation, I mean, not just within women congregation.
Well, again, this is a controversial topic because there are so many opinions on this. We do understand that Srila Prabhupada, why is it controversial? Because many times Srila Prabhupada did encourage, few times Srila Prabhupada did encourage his women disciples to lead kirtan. What we do understand is that, so I'm going to give you one understanding of this topic. That is that, yes, those were beginning days of the movement, and increasingly Srila Prabhupada did want that Vedic culture be encouraged and followed more and more. An essential part of Vedic culture is shyness. So women in general are very attractive. When they have a beautiful voice, then doubly so. So when they are leading kirtan, sometimes it is distracting, and it can be inappropriate. So as far as possible, women should be encouraged to avoid this, but that is challenged, because it is said that we should not be on the bodily platform, and we should see everyone as spirit souls. the answer to that is, well, but we're not there yet. And there are people at all levels. We see Matajis very beautifully dancing in Kirtan Mela, but that's also very distracting because they are very attractive. And we want that the people who have come to really relish Kirtan and focus on the deities. So, delicate question, because there are many contradictory views on the topic, where it seems that we are restricting the women if they want to serve by leading Kirtan. But if we see the humility that a devotee should imbibe, it should not be a big deal if for the sake of following Vedic culture, we feel that a woman has to sacrifice her chance at leading Kirtan. Of course, she can do that in her own house and gatherings where Matajis are there. So these are things we want to progress on, and bringing back the Vedic culture. In Vedic culture, women were not in the forefront, and that worked to its advantage. So if we do want to bring Vedic culture into our society, then yes, these are things that we should avoid. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Thank you so much, Mataji. Mataji, you're still okay to take questions?
I am. If the audience can, stay longer, I leave it up to you. I'm available.
All right, Mataji, we have a question from Facebook Live from Sharmila Mataji. Hare Krishna Mataji, I understand that in Vedic culture there is no divorce. When in abusive situation, we are left with no choice but to divorce. Is divorce considered committing a sin? Also, does the scripture allow a divorced women to remarry? Thank you, Mataji.
So this is mentioned in 7:11:28. You can look it up. 27 or 28. I believe it's 28, where Srila Prabhupada mentions that no, you should not remain in an abusive relationship. However, he does say clearly that there is no divorce in Vedic culture. He says that one can separate, but when one divorces, one has the flexibility to remarry, and it is not recommended for women to do that. So the answer, according to Srila Prabhupada, is that no, there should not be divorce, and no, there should not be remarriage, but do not remain in an abusive situation. Again, I would like to humbly emphasize that please let us distinguish between torturous abuse and things which are viewed as abuse, which can be worked through or which can be tolerated for the sake of having the protection under which we can follow spiritual life. So I'll explain this a little more, that sometimes maybe you are with a spouse who unreasonably misbehaves with you. So in modern language, this will be taken as abuse. But if you have the strength to, and I mean unreasonably, he may be shouting at you unreasonably, or maybe in front of other people he's not behaving properly, but he's not physically torturing you or mentally really torturing you. So if you have the strength to withstand that, you will see maybe the situation will change, or at least you will have the capacity where you have the facilities where you can follow spiritual life. It's a very difficult world if one has to live alone, to be honest. So, but what to do if this abuse is serious? Then you should separate. Again, very difficult situation. As far as possible, try to live a humble life and manage as best as you can. I know women who, either because of abuse or when they lost their husbands at a young age, they had children, but somehow or the other they depended on the Lord and they brought up the children, they remained single. It's a struggle. but what's the guarantee that the next marriage would be any better? So would you like to take that risk? It also has to be seen on a case-to-case basis. Sometimes women are very young and they separate before they have children, or they may be in need of protection. So then we can take guidance of senior devotees or their guru to see what would be the way forward for them. But in principle, it is not something that should be done casually. Neither divorce nor remarriage. Divorce, we should think like a million times before we take that step or we contemplate that step. Sure, in married life, everybody has ups and downs, and then we do contemplate like, oh, I'll be better off if I'm just away from this situation. But those situations also pass. And sometimes so many things. Sometimes it's very stressful when children are young or the money is less. Things resolve themselves. The situations may become better. We also have to look at ourselves. Are we the reason that the conflict is becoming worse? Try to avoid divorce as far as possible. No, it is not. I wouldn't say it's a sin to divorce, but probably it would be sinful for a woman to remarry. I'm sorry, I do not have a straight answer for this because I've never looked at it from that point of view, whether it's a sin. I don't know whether it constitutes a sin, but well, it's a direct instruction from Srila Prabhupada. And so at least the answer is clear that no, we should avoid it at all costs. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. There is another question from Revati Mataji in the chat. Hare Krishna Mataji, what is Mataji's advice on how to practice chastity and shyness in this 21st century where we have to mingle with men in workplace, especially for those not from devotee family?
Yeah, so my advice would be to dress very nicely. And, women have this knack of attracting men, but they also know instinctively how to repel their advances. You can tell when somebody is being overly friendly, and one should be expert in snubbing them. You know what I mean? That sometimes they start asking personal questions and, start complimenting you, then you can understand. So if you act cold towards them, they will get the message. So my recommendation would be that at the workplace, carry yourself with dignity, and the message will be very clear. So dress properly and do not engage in frivolous conversation with men. Because this happens, you have a coffee break or you're sitting down for lunch, and then people discuss like 100 topics, they joke, they laugh, and you become part of that group. So at the cost of being very unpopular or being known to be standoffish or cold, indifferent, whatever the case be, it doesn't matter. It's more important to maintain your respectability. So please do that by all means. Have a group of friends, but let that be women. So if you have to engage with discussion with your co-workers, then try to be with other women. If you are in a situation where there are very less women, then be by yourself. I mean, use your lunch break to hear a lecture and let it be known that you're not a team player and you may miss that important promotion, but it's more important to maintain your chastity than to be climbing the corporate ladder.
Thank you, Mataji. If you don't mind, Mataji, another personal question from me.
Yes.
So in regards to the marriage issue that we have discussed just now, many are thinking that when we get married, we get the extra responsibility of being mother, and we need to take care of the children, husband. And that will cause an impediment to the already service that we are engaging for Krishna, especially in temples, those kind of things. So what's your point about that, Mataji? Which one should we prioritize?
Yes, this is a very important question again, because, just like we find that there are ladies who give priority to career over the family because that's what society wants them to do. We also find amongst devotees there are Matajis who give priority to their service over family, considering that that's a very important thing to do. But Srila Prabhupada mentions in his letter to one of his disciples that you have a little child. For you, at this point, child worship is more important than deity worship. So, of course, these are specific instructions given to specific devotees, but we can understand that uh, it is emphasized so often that this is also service. When you are serving your family, you're bringing up devotees, that's wonderful service. And one should never think that, oh, I'm not able to do direct service in the temple, because you can do lots of service in your own house. You are cooking for Krishna, you're serving your family, so that way you're serving the Supreme Lord, you're serving his devotees, even if they're not devotees. This is preaching, you're serving them prasadam, and in future they may become devotees. So you're engaging in preaching, you are serving Krishna, his devotees. That's wonderful. That is service. So do not think that serving your family is separate from spiritual life and your service. This is a woman's service. It is her duty. And Lord Krishna, your Guru, Srila Prabhupada will be very satisfied if you're doing it nicely. There should be no conflict.
Thank you, Mataji. Another question from me, Mataji. What's
Yes.
your advice for Matajis who are married or non-married, who are actively involved in book distribution service? How should we bring ourselves, and what is our conduct in that service, Mataji?
Again, very relevant question, because in book distribution we do have to engage with a lot of strangers or people outside. At the same time, it's a very important service, so I would encourage more and more devotees to engage in it. Matajis should engage in it, but you can follow certain rules to do the service. At the same time, follow the principle of shyness, that again, be dressed very nicely whenever you go out, traditionally if possible with tilak, and so that immediately gives a message that you are a spiritual person. Or even if you are otherwise engaging in it, try to go in a group so that you don't have one-to-one conversations with men. You can be with another Mataji, or if at all you do have to go alone, or you're doing it by yourself, then like we mentioned about the workplace, try to keep the conversation focused on the book, the service, the philosophy, and do not prolong the conversation if somebody gets personal. So there are simple guidelines by which we can engage in it very effectively. At the same time, maintain ourselves as dignified devotees of Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Dear Mataji, is there any more other questions from the floor? All right, if no, then I think we have come to the end of our session, Mataji. Thank you
Hare
so
Krishna.
much, Her Grace Indira-Sakhi Mataji, for giving us such a wonderful and enlightening lecture today and a session. Thank you to all the participants as well. And we are certainly looking forward for more of similar sessions in the future. And we hope that all of you would be more than happy to join us. So a gentle reminder to all the participants, kindly fill in the feedback form that we would post it again in the group later. And I request everyone to kindly fill in the form. With that, we have come to the end of our session today, hoping to get Indira-Sakhi Mataji's and all your association again in the nearest time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Mataji.
much for very enlivening association. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.